This episode is sponsored by socialjobs.com, where jobs go to get social. Check them out to advertise your jobs socially. I did want to say on this episode too, because we hadn't talked about it. The one thing that we have not talked about, because we did make a little bit of a stink, or we just said, call us. We'd be happy to have a seat at the table and we'd love to talk to them about it, was Indeed. And saying, what are you doing and why are you doing it? But they officially removed the gate. It lasted for about 2 months, I think.
Yeah.
And then they went back to the regular search.
Yeah, it wasn't very. They got a lot of flack for that. Yeah, they got a lot of flack for that. I saw other people talking about it.
Yeah, why would you even do it? Just not a smart business model, one. And then your candidates can't get to the job. So now you saw employers took a hit on applications received and things like that because they made it a little bit more difficult because not everybody wants to log in into Indeed and put their resume on there.
And it's hard even for a recruiter to go out and check that their job is up. If they're not getting traction on their job, how are they going to be able to go? Because we always told recruiters that if you're not getting applications, go make sure you can find the
don't
job.
click it.
And then when you do,
go find it.
Yeah, don't click on it, but make sure it's there. Make sure you found it and it's yours, and then we'll reach out to Indeed and find out why it's not getting any traction.
One of the things I always think about is us telling the hiring managers too, because they would go on and they would start looking for their job on Indeed and they would click it and they would click it and they would wonder why they went on again and they didn't see the job. And I'm like, because you're clicking it and not applying and it's optimizing what you're seeing. Because obviously if you don't apply, you're not really interested in the job. So of course it's not going to keep serving it up to you.
Right.
Why would it? Sounds nuts. That's just crazy talk.
Not like Monster Career Builder.
Yeah. So the other thing that I saw, they did remove the gate, which is great. Smart move. Glad you listened. I think it was our episode that made her remove the gate. But the other thing, I'm sure it was ours. I'm sure someone, I said, Indeed. So someone had to listen in. But the other thing that they did, that I heard they're doing, and I read a little bit about it. I don't know. There's some buzz around it, is all I'm going to say. But they now want to get out of the systems. They want to go into like your ATS systems and pull that data out. Remember, like a lot of what we would talk to the Indeed rep about was to say, are we converting higher? But the last thing I want is a feed into my database, pulling it out and putting it into their database or understanding that data and mapping it back. Because sure, you do have a conglomerate. Is conglomerate the right word? I was going to say shitload, but you have a whole.
Well, they are a part of a conglomerate. Yeah.
You have a whole crap ton. I feel like that word would be okay. Of candidates in there. So chances are at some point they hit the Indeed database, but it doesn't necessarily mean because it's a candidate in my database that it came from you. They could have came to me as an employer organically because they know my brand, just saying. So I just thought it was really interesting. So I just don't know in what world and in what vein you would give a job board access to your database. It sounds wonky.
Absolutely not. Well, and I can't imagine anybody's IT department.
Now I'm going to give Indeed access, and I'm going to give Zip access, and I'm going to give Monster access, which is a part of a staffing company, and like Career Builder, and you know what I mean? Like, you're just going to give everybody your database now, or let them map in?
Yeah, and I think no. And I think that too, when a candidate is already concerned about their data, if they're applying through your website, they've approved you to have their data, but not Indeed. And maybe they have a problem with Indeed and they don't use Indeed, or maybe they did. And, who knows? Like you'd have to have people opt in for all of that too. That doesn't, no. Of course they're going to want to map to it because they want to show their value. They've been around long enough that now they're really having to start proving their value because that's really starting to come into question.
Yeah. So I think it comes down to, again, dollars. Because if you can say, 90% of candidates in your database we have in our database. So therefore, well, no, because my recruiter might have direct sourced them. Maybe they did source them off of Indeed, right? But they could have also direct sourced them off of LinkedIn. Because when you're a candidate, you're usually not in one place. I feel like candidates are in multiple places, and there's usually a top 3 or
Sure.
4 that they go to when they're looking for things. And then there's also you go direct because you know every job. I might be sending a news flash to some people, but every job is not necessarily advertised. So you go directly to a company who you know and is interested in. And if you don't know who hires for the type of roles that you're looking for and what your skill set is, I would recommend to go to ChatGPT, aka Jupiter.
Well, yeah, because you could have somebody who registers with Indeed, never gets anything from it, right? And then their friend gets hired at a company and is like, you should come work here. I love it or whatever. So then the person goes directly to that company and applies, even though, but they already have a relationship, so to speak, with Indeed because they registered with them. If Indeed maps to it and is like, oh, that was our candidate. Well, no, they actually found out about the company because of a friend, right? I mean, that's a very organic way for people to find out
Mhm.
about jobs and stuff, right? So, yeah, I would have a real problem with that. I think it's would be very suspicious. I think they would suddenly start seeing a huge conversion rate happening with all of their
Danielle, in my
candidates.
head right now, is like the don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious,
Don't be
don't be
suspicious.
suspicious.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious. I love that.
So in my head. All right, I'm going to read because I asked Jupiter. I said, what are the Indeed changes and how are they impacting with employers? So I think this would be beneficial to just read it as it is. We can talk about it because this is a big, 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 big change. Again, seat at the table any day. We're there for this. We'd love to provide our inputs and feedback other than on our episode. Anyways, all right. So from the mouth of Jupiter or from the chat of Jupiter, my chat GPT. Indeed has recently implemented significant changes to its policies regarding how employers share data with the platform. These updates are designed to enhance transparency, improve candidate matching, and ensure compliance with policy regulations. Key policy changes for employers. Number 1, mandatory sharing of disposition data by April 2025. Employers integrating with Indeed Apply are required to share disposition data, information about the status of each applicant, such as interviewed, rejected, or hired. This data helps Indeed optimize job ad targeting and improve the candidate experience. Sharing this information can also earn employers. Sharing this information can also earn employers a responsive employer badge, signaling prompt communication to job seekers. Since when does a disposition status signal prompt communication? Because unless you have in your system or unless Indeed's going to build in, and now they're assuming every one of my jobs goes to Indeed, by the way, P.S. I love you.
Which it
Right.
may not.
Now it doesn't automate that process. Like we have products to be able to do that, right? That are not just Indeed, that are across your entire publication platform that you do want to provide disposition feedback. One, so you can track your funnel, you know your ROI, you know what you're paying CPA, CPC, CPQA, cost per qualified applicant, cost per click, cost per application. All right, so there's places that you want to pass that back, but you're one publisher. You're one.
Well, they want to be the only.
If anybody needs a solution for this, holler, call me. I have it. I just want to say that out loud. I have your
Yeah, I would
alternate
have
solution.
no trust.
You dial me up and I will tell you what it is. All right, so the second thing is inclusion of screener questions with EEO compliance. By April 2025, all Indeed Apply integrations must include screener questions, including equal opportunity EEO questions for U.S. employers. This requirement ensures a standardized application process and supports compliance with employment laws. So now are they trying to become an ATS? Are they a Workday now that makes you pay for your jobs out there? I don't know. or Bullhorn or whatever. But
Yeah, it kind of
this
sounds
is
like.
really odd for a publisher, right?
Well, that's the thing, that they want to be everything. They're trying to do too much. They want to be everything. Oh, every candidate's on Indeed. No, they're not. No, I haven't had any success on Indeed as a candidate, and I know that system backwards and
Yeah.
forwards. It's
All right, number
ridiculous.
4. We're still in the thick of it, Danielle. It doesn't stop there. Number 4, use of conversion
Okay.
trackers. I love me a good tracker. Trackers are my life. All right, but they're talking about like the pixels. I was just good old tracker spreadsheets. All right.
Right.
Indeed provides employers with conversion trackers. Oh, thank you, Indeed. Thank you. Code snippets placed on their websites to track when a job seeker applies for a job. This tool helps attribute applications to Indeed, This tool helps applications to Indeed, even if the job seeker navigates away from the platform before applying. It also allows for tracking applications across devices if the job seeker is logged into the employer's website. So again, now you're placing trackers, pixels, you're going back and tracking it to the employer site. This is not for the greater good of candidates and employers. This is for the greater good of Indeed in their pockets and them trying to.
Indeed has never done anything for the greater good of an employer or a candidate. Everybody should just know that. That is not in their DNA. Maybe it was when they were startup, but no, that is not, no. It's all about the
This
greater
is
good of Indeed and
wild.
recruit,
It's wild. So again, I love me a good, I will say, I think throughout the years being in recruiting, I will say Indeed was a gold mine, right? Like for candidates, getting applies in, all of those things. And I feel like they still have a high presence and high relevance in the market. And I think putting this stuff in and telling employers this is what you need to do to operate with us, I just don't see and think it's a good idea, y'all. I just don't think it's a good idea.
That's the thing is like when you think about people who are in a position to make these decisions, most of them don't really understand how all of it works because they don't need to for their job. Or you have people who are in their 30s who are making these decisions, and not that I'm like criticizing somebody being younger, but your entire career Indeed has existed. Like if you are 35 years old, Indeed started in what, like 2006 or something, like almost 20 years that they've been around, 2005, 2006. So you figure people who are in their like early career, mid career, they've only really ever known Indeed and LinkedIn. Like Monster and Career Builder have been around, ZipRecruiter's been around, but those are minor players. Whereas people like us who've been around longer, who used all those tools, who saw, LinkedIn coming in and Indeed and all these things, we've seen the evolution and we know what those tools were like in the beginning. But people who maybe just started using Indeed 10 years ago, this is how they've always been. You don't remember when they were letting you post all your jobs for free. You don't remember when they didn't have candidates because they didn't capture that data. And then suddenly one day, we've got a candidate database and it's free to use. And then suddenly they came back and were like, oh, well, now it's just you get 100 contacts a month. And then over that,
Yep.
you have to pay a subscription, stuff like that. So you've seen all these iterations, but people who haven't been a part of that don't remember that there was something else. And it's unusual in our space, I think, especially post 9/11, even when before that, there wasn't, there was a tech explosion and there was a tech bubble that burst and there was all these new things happening. There hasn't been a site like LinkedIn and Indeed to monopolize the space like they have for this long, right? So you figure, yeah, sure, there's others in the space, but like Yahoo Jobs has been gone for a long time. And there's a lot of other sites that are coming up and, kind of becoming more strategic and not trying to be everything to everyone. But that was what Indeed and LinkedIn were. And now they've tried to become everything to everyone. And you can't. It's just not possible. And, it's like Amazon has tried to do that
Yeah.
with shopping, right? But then eventually people are like, well, I can't find everything at Amazon, or I want to go shop at my local store, stuff like that. So we all kind of get used to the idea of like a one stop shop, but then you sometimes realize maybe that's not the best way to go about it, or I don't have as much price flexibility or as much choice. So I'm going to do something else. And I think that's kind of the space we're into, and that Indeed's really trying to get back that control that they had. But that's gone. That is never coming back because they had it for such a long time. So, same thing with LinkedIn, and they haven't really changed their technology. It's rough, basically the exact same product that it's been, with some minor enhancements or nuances and things that it's always been. But that's just my perspective. I just think that a lot of people who are making those decisions today, that's all they know. So, and they believe what their sales reps tell them,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is a problem.
You got a little bee in your bonnet on that one, didn't you?
Well,
I
I
never.
had that epiphany like a couple of weeks ago. Well, a couple weeks ago when I was talking to somebody, and I'm like, if you think about the age thing related to people who are making decisions who all they've ever known is Indeed and LinkedIn, then you think the world kind of, the sun rises and the sun sets based on these two tools. And they would have you believe that because they've had all this control for so long. But,
So
it's sort of like when the Japanese cars started coming
yeah,
into the United States and disrupting Detroit, sort of the same idea.
yeah,
Like you start giving people other options, maybe it's a little less expensive, gets a little better gas mileage, you know, people get a little nervous.
yeah. I think about, well, there's still recruiters too though, because I recently did a shadow, and there was one that really, like, she used Monster. She grew up on Monster, I'll say, and she was still using Monster, which there's nothing wrong with that, but you got to diversify your tools. You can't horse
I
and
mean, that is
buggy it
very
the whole
normal. That's
time. I
very
mean,
normal.
you can, but
Like, don't you want a hybrid at this
yeah,
point? Like,
yeah. So
maybe even an
yeah.
e-bike?
All right, so I'm going to go through there's five. So we're number five of their changes that they've made. Data sharing and privacy compliance. Employers must ensure that any data shared with Indeed complies with relevant privacy laws, such as General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, and the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA. Geez, we all got to follow California rules now. That's crazy.
Right.
This includes informing applicants about how their data will be used and obtaining necessary consents. So now, on top of all of that, if you want to use Easy Apply, you have to have another subset of approvals of data. And I'm just so interested to see how all this maps out.
Well, and then Canada has a whole other thing. So if you're close to the border and you're hiring across the border, if the Canadians even want to have anything to do with this, I don't know. But like, there's all
Well,
those
then if you have the
regulations
French
too.
Canadian in Montreal, I mean, there's a bunch of other different things that need to happen too within that, right? You have to have the language. I mean, but anyways, so these policies, this is again Jupiter speaking here, based off of what Indeed has published out there. These policy updates reflect Indeed's commitment to creating more efficient and transparent hiring process for both employers and job seekers. Can I read that last part again? Because I mean, employers are encouraged to review these changes and adjust their recruitment strategies accordingly to stay compliant and competitive in the evolving job. I just have a pretty big problem with some of these because, like I said, love me a good Indeed Innovation Center session. Love me a good seat at the table. Would love to have some conversations with how these things are being done. But I'm not sure who in product. It's got to be product. It can't be anybody else. It can't be.
Well, I mean, they do this every year. They come up with new and ridiculous ways to sabotage the relationships that they have. I don't know why this keeps happening. It keeps happening, but every year they come up with new ways to piss everybody off and think that it's going to go unnoticed or unchallenged. Then somewhere down the line, you hear, oh, well, we're not enforcing that anymore. Oh, we're not doing that anymore. Oh, we're not. and it's always under the guise of this is the right thing to do for employers. This is the right thing to do. Okay, and if it is federal legislation or state legislation, fine. You have to do those things. But if it's just like this is the right thing to do, who are you to moralize these things to us? Because, it's you're another corporation. You're another very big corporation. Like, who are you to tell any company how they should run
Yeah.
their business?
I think
It's
about
just
even being in the
ridiculous.
RPO space, right? And when you're trying to get data and integrate data, and then we deal with this today, current company, where we're trying to get data, integrate data. And there's so much privacy around that, right? And these are tools that I'm talking about when you go to an RPO or when you go to, an organization that's programmatic or has multiple technologies. I'll just bucket it in that. You have multiple technologies that you need to receive that data. There's so much that goes into that, and so much work and so much understanding that needs to happen. What I also think that Indeed doesn't, they're not really putting their minds around, because I don't know if they have enough people to go in and to integrate with each one of these systems and pull the statuses that are set up in customized workflows to receive. Sure, you have your common ones, hired, but some of them, even like if you're thinking about a staffing company, are assigned. They're on assignment. They're not hired in the system. So now you have to create all of these different statuses. And by the way, can I just say once again, you're a publisher, you're a job board.
Right. That's what I think. They're trying to do too much. They're trying to be everything to everyone. And I bet you when it comes to the integration piece, they would put a lot of pressure on the bullhorns, on the greenhouses, the workdays, all the companies there, because they're going to say, "Oh, well, we already integrate with them." Well, no, you don't. You do at a very minimal level, but then every individual company is going to have its own customization. So they're going to then end up putting pressure on the individual company to do the integration of that in conjunction with what they already have, which may cause ripple effects of other things that have to be changed. And then you have the situation of, is the data integrity right? Is it, are they capturing information that they shouldn't? And if you happen to be an employer who is like a government contractor or different things like that, that's going to change things too. Or a healthcare organization having access like there's a lot of data privacy things that are going to be
Oh,
impacted that I would
and the
think.
other thing is, like,
Yeah.
my question too that I have is, if they're saying this is around apply, right? But they're going in and they're retrieving data out of the system, and you have to have the information. They have to go in to retrieve the statuses and things like that, and it talk back just to be a quick apply. Now, if I'm in a person or a candidate that goes in direct to an employer website, I go to my preferred company XYZ or my preferred companies and I go apply. Are they pulling back my data even though I didn't quick apply? But because does it hit all, or is it
Right.
just now you have to have a source ID code that it's tracking all around and says, oh, at some point, Jennifer visited Indeed and then she went on to the company website direct. So therefore now she's an Indeed candidate. It's
That's what I'm saying.
tracking me
Like you
through
could
that. Like
you could have applied
I
for
have
a
such a
job.
big problem with this. You know,
Yeah, there's a lot of data integrity issues that I would be concerned about. And then the dispositioning data. Are you kidding me? You understand like when people get thousands of applications, a lot of that it never happens. There's not or it's sitting there for a very, very long time. Like I can't even
yeah,
yeah. I think again, just they're just
I
trying to
think
do
so
too
too.
much.
I think they're trying to become a technology. Why else would you need this information other than I just remember having,
Well, they already
yeah,
considered
I
it
have,
though.
we've had multiple conversations, right? And I've had multiple conversations with Indeed that says, you're wanting me to give you more budget when I don't have it. And you're wanting me to pull from my other resources. So you're wanting me to pull from my Zip recruiters. You're wanting me to pull from my Monster back in the day, my career builder, right? So you're wanting me to pull all of these budgets over to you because you're saying you provide the most value in the most candidates and everything else. What I'm not seeing, you remember these conversations, Danielle, what I'm not seeing is you converting to hire in my system. Okay. So, and because I'm not seeing that, no, I'm not shifting budget because these resources are important to me because they're producing hires. So, yes, your resource is important to me too, but I need to keep my publication diversified in where I'm feeding my jobs out to. I need to keep diversifying that because I need all of my avenues. I need all the places I can go. I need to be able to do these things in different ways. So, where I think this is stemming from, because I personally had those conversations with Indeed, is to try to mitigate that and say, well, now we can see everything that's in your system and we have 90% of these people on Indeed. Well, or 80 or 50 or 40 or 30 or whatever that percentage looks like, you know, which we know you have that percentage in your database, but it doesn't mean that it came from you at the same time. Because just like a candidate might be going on to Indeed, they might be going on to Zip, they might be going on wherever. I might be able to search them socially, right? Or source them socially. Like put a job in front of them, they applied, but maybe they did go visit Indeed earlier, but I pushed out a job socially and that's what they saw. And that's what they clicked on. And that's how they got into the system. But you're going to tell me that they actually came through you, which isn't true. I had to serve that job up 2 or 3 times to get that candidate to convert. So I just feel
Right.
like it's trying to capture the dollar again. It's not really putting candidates and employers first.
Trying to show their value.
And it's a cost play. It's a dollar play. They are profits first, which most companies are. I get that. But when you're building these technologies or when you're servicing candidates and employers, job seekers, employers, whatever you want to say, there's such a better way to do it. They're not, once again, tone deaf and
Yeah,
not
I mean, that's
listening.
the thing. It's like they're totally, yeah, because I think they'll manipulate the data to show, oh, well, we sent all these candidates. But the thing about, like, especially if you're a staffing organization, is sure, you may have gotten a candidate from Indeed or ZipRecruiter, wherever, and placed them. But if the person doesn't stay in that job for a while, you're losing out on all that revenue, and you might have to replace them. So just the fact that you placed them and they started doesn't necessarily mean that it was the right value either. So, like, if you could track it to revenue generated, which is what I was trying to do at, Clover, and we were getting there with some, we could actually start to track, that the person was placed and then they stayed on this job for X amount of weeks or months. And so then we made this much in revenue from them. And then when you look at how much it costs to get that initial application, that's really
Mm-hmm.
powerful. I mean, if you don't have that many jobs or they're all direct with placement or something, that's a different thing. But yeah, I mean, yeah, Indeed's going to do what Indeed's going to do.
Indeed's gonna Indeed.
They're going to do the Indeed of it all.
Indeed's gonna Indeed. We can make a thing. And like I said, they're a great resource. I
Like,
don't have anything against
sure,
Indeed.
yeah.
It's just stop making these
It's really about,
decisions.
it's not about the tool, it's about the way that it's about the way
Yes.
they're positioning the tool and the decisions they're making around forcing people into making certain decisions and forcing your clients. It's not very client or candidate friendly, which is always what they say. Always, oh, we did this because of the candidate.
Put
No,
up a
you
gate
didn't.
and a
Your
wall.
engineers and your frontline people
No.
don't talk to each other. No, because how do you know what the recruiters want or the candidates want? Because they don't talk to each other. The recruiters are talking to their support team at Indeed, who have no interaction with engineers. So they can't, it might take months to get a resolution to something and you have no idea what's happening. Like, it's just not, yeah, that's
It's
that's a
like,
lie.
ta-da, here's a new
I'm just gonna
product,
say
or
it's a lie.
ta-da, here's a new process and how we're changing this.
Don't look at what we did last year.
Don't do
Yeah.
that. But and there's been some really valuable lessons learned, I feel like. Well, I don't think they learned them though. Because even when you think about that geo location and you can only post within a certain radius and whatever else. All right. So now I'm a travel company. I'm a travel nursing company. Now what do I do? Because I want that talent from California to come to Florida. But you're telling me because the job's in Florida, I can't post in California. Now they have a work around that. But how long was that a problem for, especially even just something as simple as I'm in a rural market and I need to recruit from the nearest biggest cities. Oh, too far out of your range. You can't do that. Like,
I
what?
mean, like where I'm at, we live in, yeah, we live in a small city, but it would be nothing to travel 40, 50 miles to another
Yeah.
city to work every day. Right. And that's a completely different, set of zip codes
Yeah.
and
It
things.
was like every time, you're going to renew a contract, your head would spin because, okay, wait, what's now you're changing this
We got
and
a whole
why are
lot.
you changing it? And it was working for us before. And then, oh, by the way, buy this extra
They like to
database. And
implement,
yeah.
right. They like to implement changes in April. That's always when new change. But I think what they do is like a lot of companies, they review in first quarter what happened for the year and then how their first quarter is doing. That's when they start rolling out the changes. And then they try to look like, oh, we're giving you
You know what
until
I think it
April to do
is,
this. And
Danielle?
it's like, oh, you just found out.
I just had a moment because, well, it all depends on when you sign up with Indeed, but the majority of companies that we've worked for, we've renewed or we had to have extensions in January as we were, if we came up to the holidays or whatever. But the renewals happen in December, essentially. I would say the bulk of them. So let's say it's 70%. Other people have contracts that expire at different times throughout the year. So let's say 70% or even, yeah, there's some sort of majority that expires and renews at the end of the year. So now you know what your revenue is for those remaining for the next year, you're forecasted. Now, because people are shifting spend or diversifying spend, or maybe, well, not maybe, we know based on this economy, people are spending less. It is just the nature of the cycle of our economics that's we're in right now. They are spending less. So now you're looking at it over the first quarter to go, how can we charge? And what can we do to one, build this dependency, two, control the market again, and three, capture back some of that revenue? And I think that's where some of this stuff has to come.
Because every year they have to increase the prices. They increase the prices. They want I mean, and Indeed has told me this directly. We are sent out and told by their salespeople are told that they have to increase their buy from a, long-standing customer by 20% every year. And I'm sorry, but there's no businesses that I've ever worked for where you increase your revenue year over year by 20%.
I've
That's
had the
crazy.
goal.
And
They've given
that's
me,
what well, sure, you can have the goal all you want, but it's not going to happen. And
it
so
ain't
unless you're
happening.
Apple and you like came out with the iPhone, and then the iPad and all those things, but even Apple, I doubt has that much revenue anymore. But that's their marching orders. You got to get to 20%. So they have all this pressure on the salespeople to do that. They roll out these enhancements that don't really enhance anything and just piss people off in order to justify the idea of increasing
Yeah.
the prices. They did it last year when they increased the cost of the the sourcing license, and like, oh, it's going to have all these cool AI features that nobody asked for, nobody wanted, and didn't work very well because, with the company I was at, we got them early. And I had so many people, so many recruiters are like, what the heck is going on? Why do we have all these things? They didn't
Yeah.
like it. That's the thing. It's like they put out these enhancements and changes, and then they don't tell anybody, or they tell you about it way ahead of time. And it's just you have to take it or leave it. You can't leave it and keep the same, I mean,
Yeah.
I just don't know any other industry where that kind of thing it happens,
Yeah.
you know?
I don't know. I'm sure there's some out there, but I don't, they were really good at candidate acquisition, really good at candidate acquisition at one point in time.
Yeah.
And then technology has shifted, shaped. People have started to operate differently too, right? So when they go to look for jobs and things like that, we're in a society that will now want to be served up jobs, by the way. That's going to be, that's coming. I mean, We heard our Gen Zer say, I go to LinkedIn because I have to. I go to Indeed because I have to. What I would really like to be able to do
I'm a
is say, here's my resume. Where are the
Gen
jobs
Xer.
that I can apply for? Where are those sitting? So we're going to continue to shape. We're going to continue to shift. We're going to continue to evolve. And I just feel like figure out how to stay good, what you're good at, without adding all the extra crap to it. Because one, technology is going to evolve with or without you. And it would
Right. They're not evolving.
behoove you to partner in a good way with people and to really understand their needs and understand the needs of the candidate, understand the needs of the companies and organizations, and then also those that work with different publishers and things like that to figure that out to then maintain your revenue, what you need to do. And again, understand the dynamics of the economy that's happened and is happening, because every year you're not going to be able to increase. Ideally you can, and ideally you can find business growth and you can find new accounts to go after. But guess what? That revenue increase doesn't come from existing business typically. It's through the acquisition of a new client, whatever that looks like. You can have some organic growth within businesses that you have, right? You're going to find some things there. They grow, you grow. That's awesome.
Sure.
But stop being dependent on,
If they invested in their technology,
changing the prices just to capture more dollar. Like it just, all right. I think that was enough of our Indeed.
that's all they're
I
doing.
took us there, but I think we need to go there.
All right. This is like,
All right. I think we should stop there, Danielle.
sometimes you just gotta. Yep.
All
I
right,
think
we'll
that's
wrap
it.
up by saying this episode is sponsored by socialjobs.com. Check them out to advertise your job socially. Danielle?
Yes. And if you want to check us out on any of our streaming services, Spotify, Audible, Audio, Boom, all of the places. And there's a link in our show notes to buy us a coffee and check out Ozarine Skincare, Jennifer's brand. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share with your network and your friends. Anything else?
We're on all your favorite listening portals and channels. Make sure you hit that bell to subscribe. And until next time, bye. Going.